Well, I'm pumped. Eduardo, waiting for ridiculous Jill.mp3 to play. I know, right? No, that will not be making an appearance this week. I think we've all heard enough of that one. Oh my. Well, as some of you returning may be well aware, we have been bringing on some guest hosts for Real Talk for the past few weeks. We had Mark Kilborn from the Call of Duty team. He's audio director on that stuff, audio principal now. We had Adam Gubman, who's been a composer on over 500 video games across the board, from AAA and indie and casino stuff and mobile stuff across the board. Coming up this month, we'll have Camden Stoddard from Double Fine. We'll have Jeff Van Dyke, who is audio director on Alien Isolation. We're bringing on Jerry from what's his last name? Berlinghieri, I think is how you say it. I'm probably butchering that, but Berlinghieri, he did music for like Descent 3. A game I have mixed feelings about, except for the soundtrack. Incredible. And he's now audio director at Take-Two. And today, as evidenced down below here, we've got Mike Morasky and Emily Ridgway from Valve. And this is probably going to be something of a unique episode because Valve hires in a very unique way. And of course, I'm not the best person to talk about it, but we have Emily and Mike here today. So I'm sure that in approaching these reels, we'll very likely be talking about kind of what Valve might be looking for specifically. And as a guy who once applied to Valve, I'm really curious actually. I have a pretty solid idea of what I'm going to hear, but yeah, I actually applied with my own game, Phonopath. It's an audio puzzle game I made back in 2012. So before Power Up Audio, well, I applied there, and the then audio director, well, they don't really have titles at Valve, they sort of do whatever that needs doing, but the audio director there hit me up at GDC, and he's like, you need to reapply, man, you gotta. But I wasn't quite ready yet. And then we made Power Up Audio instead. So I was like, Valve will be there. I can try again later if Power Up Audio fails miserably, but it's 4 years in and we're still around, so I'm okay with the choice I made. It's alright. Yeah, I'm really pumped to have them here. They've both been in the industry for quite some time now. Emily, actually, I think Emily's done like some writing as well. I mean, being Valve, it's kind of, they tend to hire multi-talented people, you know? But, and Emily also did some work on like The Lab, which is the title that shipped with the Vive, right? The VR platform Valve put out. And, I mean, Mike's been at Valve for a long, long time. I think he's had 12 years. And so he worked on like Half-Life 2, both the Portals, Team Fortress 2, some Dota stuff, all kind of in varying capacities. So should be pretty damn good this week, all right? And as far as who we're looking at two names I will likely butcher a bit. And I'm curious if they're in the chat. If you are, please call yourself out so we know you're here. And we can talk about some specifics here and there, you know? But we've got Matas, and Mohammed. Should be all right. Turn you down a bit. Here we go. There we go. All right. I think without further ado, I should bring on Emily and Mike. Give me 1 second here. And here we go. Bring on the guests, says Matt. Hey, Emily.
Hello.
Hello. And Mike will be hopefully picking up soon as well. Oh, well, welcome on to Real Talk, yo.
Thank you.
It's pretty exciting.
Good to be here.
Hey, Mike.
Good to be here at work doing a podcast.
Can you hear me?
We can, man. Yeah, so Emily, you're at Valve right now, right?
I am, yep.
Yeah. And Mike is actually separate, so we're on 2 different calls right now, but should be fine. Should be all right.
Yeah, Mike's surfing down in San Francisco right now.
Right.
That's right. I've got my studio installed on a surfboard, so
Fully interrupting your vacation time right now. All right. So I said a bit about kind of what's going on with you guys, but so Emily, you are a bit newer to Valve than Mike, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where were you before that?
Before that, I was actually working with one of your upcoming guests, actually Camden Stoddard at
fair enough.
Double Fine.
Right. Okay.
And then before that, I was working at Irrational on the original BioShock. And then before that, I worked at Pandemic Studios way back in the day, 2004.
Oh wow, so long ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez, I got my start in like 2009. So yeah, man, I'll catch up there eventually a bit. And Mike, you were saying you got hired to Valve not even as sound originally, right?
Yeah, no, I had worked previously with Bay Rate, who was kind of one of the first people that I knew that worked at Valve, and we were working on films, doing animation and that sort of work, visual effects stuff.
Right.
And so he kind of talked me into coming on board at Valve. And I just saw my original agreement the other day, and then actually I was hired as an animator. So,
right.
Which I actually had very little interest in doing, believe it or not. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, you sent me this this thing. So in past weeks, we've talked about kind of how it's sometimes interesting, sometimes embarrassing to look back at like our first gigs and see what that portfolio looked like. I mean, we tear apart and roast and try and offer the most constructive criticism we can every week on various reels. But like, if I look back at the reel I applied to my first job with and got hired, like I would not hire me. So I'm
1%.
I'm pretty lucky, I think. Hey, Final Axiom, thanks for that follow, yo. And for everyone just joining us, by the way, for the first time, I think we have some Twitch front page-ness happening right now. So for those of you joining us for the first time, this is Real Talk. It's a weekly segment put on by myself at Power Up Audio and Matthew Martinson in the chat holding it down, helping us out from Clay Entertainment, and as well as various guest hosts over the week. And over the weeks, rather. So we receive submitted game audio demo reels from up-and-coming professionals in game sound, and we take them in and we review them based on a few criteria. So these criteria are as follows down on the left-hand side. You can see them there. So the first being presentation, and presentation is basically kind of everything, just how you're conveying yourself to people who don't know you from Adam at all. So it's really important to realize people don't know who you are at all when you apply, usually, and how you present yourself is pretty important. So in terms of things like your reels flow and just general aesthetics and your website layout, if it's easy to find info that people need, that kind of thing. For material selection, the next point, we look at what kind of content is in your reel itself. So if you put in certain kinds of games or certain presentations of kinds of games, or what kind of content's even in there in terms of things you've worked on, things you haven't worked on, just maybe redesigns or maybe things from game jams, that kind of thing. And as well, what that says about you and your ambitions and your current skill sets and your past work. And then for content quality, we simply say, is your work at the industry standard of awesome? And if it's not, we'll try and give you some insight on how you can improve yourself that way. And distinction is something of a buzzword, but it basically means, are you standing out? Because there is a veritable sea, it's an absolute ocean of aspiring people just like you out there who want the job you want, and if you aren't standing out, then you're going to be dead in the water. And standing out can be a variety of things. It could be a slick website, it could be a particularly good reel, it could be a kind of unique way of presenting your reel, it could be, we had one fellow I was bringing up because it's just so interesting, we had Gray Davenport, he made in pure data, he made a somewhat working version of Space Invaders, like in the UI of this, of pure data. And like, I remember that, so the fact that I recall that from months ago is kind of indicative that he had that distinction point, that checkbox marked off. So, anyways, today we are looking at piearesquared, who is Mohammed Ashraf, I believe. And we also have Matas, and I'm gonna butcher your last name, man. It's something in the about page, I think. Matas. Oh man, it's probably even better I don't even say your last name. It's pretty brutal. It hurt last time I read it. So, anyways, I think we'll look at piearesquared first. Oh, but before that though, let's look at this this TF2 teaser Mike, yeah?
Oh yeah.
So you're saying
Sort
you're
of my reel.
right. This is so Mike was kind of already hired at Valve in a sense, but not for sound, and they basically said, well, we need this covered on music. Can you help us out? And he went for it. So let's press play. Let's do it. Yeah, all right. And I said, actually, before the call, I was telling Mike that TF2 has something of a warm place in my heart. I played 1,000 hours of that game. So, heard that track a few times. Anyway, so yeah, so you basically like rescored that animation, right, Mike?
Yeah, there was a temp track on there that was really good, and I basically got a call on Friday afternoon saying, hey, we don't have the rights for this. Can you do a piece of music for it? And I was like, sure, no problem. When do you need it? And they're like, Monday morning.
Nice.
And so, and nobody, pretty much, I later learned that nobody believed I could get it done, but they just were like, well, let's just humor them and see how this goes. And I got together with some friends who have a studio and threw it together, and sort of that was the beginning of like, okay, so we just hired a musician. And
so you proved everyone wrong. There you go.
Yeah, sometimes that's how it goes, or sometimes you get the job and you still have to prove what it is you can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
certainly. Yeah, so I'm really curious. You kind of before the stream, we were talking briefly, and Mike and Emily were kind of talking about how there's basically something of a unique kind of hiring practice at Valve, and like how you go about that whole process. So I'm really curious how that compares to kind of the common points that come up every week for us. As you know, I mean, myself working at a company doing kind of outsourcing work, we would hire very differently. We would like look for different things than a company like Matt Martinson, for example, at Clay Entertainment. They're kind of like triple I indie, you know. So I'm looking forward to this. So, anyways, let's go over to piearesquared first here, and it's typical for us to get reels submitted kind of as websites. So, for example, Matas's website is more typical in that it's kind of like, here is my site, here's everything there is to know about me. But we'll look at the piearesquared one here, kind of just as is, and we'll see where we get. So I guess there's not much else to look at right now. It's 2 minutes long, and before I even press play, Emily, do you have something of like, if you're looking at reels and such, do you have kind of a comfort zone as far as how long you think it should be?
It's a good question. It actually, I kind of look at like, if it, I guess like around about 2 minutes. Like 2 minutes is good, a minute is okay, as well. If the trailer, if the reel itself is designed in such a way that it kind of keeps me entertained, and the pacing of the reel itself shows some kind of skill there,
Mm-hmm.
then that's definitely a part of what we look for here as well. I think is like because oftentimes that's a part of our job as sound designers, is to, we do have some control over the pacing of trailers, especially as they're getting cobbled together, as Mike said at the last second.
Right, certainly.
So that skill is definitely important. But yeah, just around 1 to 2 minutes is good reel length.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely it comes up every week because inevitably we get reels that are super long, and we're like, okay, well, there's no way you need this much time to convey what you're trying to convey. And in terms of holding attention, we generally say like aim for 1 minute, and if it gets a bit longer and it's still worth having the additional content like kind of past the 1 minute mark, then great. So yeah, I mean 2 is like, yeah, Mike.
I always feel like if it's good, I kind of want it to keep going because I want to learn more. But you have to kind of decide for yourself how. And I don't mean like good, like, ooh, that sound was good. Ooh, that sounds even better. Like, oh, like you can only go so far with that, right? Like sizzle reels are not actually generally what we're looking for. But if you're like, showing off some, kind of implementation where the sound design is really good and it's, and it takes longer to explain, I'll sit through the whole thing if it's good. In fact, I prefer to have it all explained to me than coming away having a bunch of questions,
Right. Yeah, interesting. So one thing that Matt and I often kind of touch upon is the idea of treating your site or your application, whatever that might look like, as kind of as a narrative, and doing your best to control that narrative, or at least accommodate for the different kinds of narratives that a given person, like a visitor to your site, might have. So something like, if you want to see more, because it's interesting, perhaps they do have a short clip of some cool implementation or something, and you think to yourself, oh, I want to see more of that, then it should be painfully obvious like how to go see more of that kind of thing, So yeah, it's we generally like our position, and of course our position is not the hard and fast rule at all. I mean, right away you heard Emily say 2 minutes. We're always saying 1 minute. So it varies from person to person, and studio to studio, of course. But yeah, in terms of like just wanting people to hear more is I think the one thing everyone can kind of agree upon is as far as what you should be doing. So let's press play. Yeah, are you pumped? And the crowd goes mild. No, it's fine. Okay, I don't think you can hear Chrome on my side, so I'll just press play. I shouldn't need to mute myself, but I'll go full screen here, and I guess in 3, 2, 1, and go. Now let's pause for a second and say that I would very likely be pushing forward to this point, like skipping ahead, but we'll keep pressing play here. All right, and we're done. Okay, so first off, let me just press a little applause, and thank you, Mohammed. All right, so I saw a lot of opinions going on in the chat right away, and I'm sure they're pretty common for a lot of people watching right now. So first impressions, Emily and Mike, what do you think?
I really don't like, re-skinning of existing material. Mostly just because it's, if we're talking about games, we're, talking about something that's by definition interactive. It's not like, oh, here, we're going to do film or video or something like that. But also, I don't know if it's just me, but I see it and I go like, ooh, Cuphead, awesome. Like, this is the guy who did Cuphead. And then I go, wait a minute, no, this isn't actually. And so it gives me almost like a negative, it's a backfire almost because I'm like, no, I was excited and now it's just not as good as Cuphead.
Right.
And choosing, those are great choices. Cuphead and Limbo are both awesome choices. But that's a tough, man, to go up against Limbo like that is really...
Yeah, so that comes up kind of frequently. And for example, we had one fellow who's a composer who came on, composer and sound designer, and he rescored Journey. And we're like, oh man, like you can't do better. You're not going to do better than like the only Grammy nomination for a video game ever. It's not going to happen. So it's and I see Limbo, I see Inside, for example, gets redesigned too, and you're like, man, it's a bold choice. And Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the choice of game to score there is just like, it's too hard. I don't mind the concept of taking existing material and kind of adding your own take on it. But it has to be like an interesting take. And ideally you want people to, if they're going to compare your work to the original game, you want your work to be better. Like that should be the goal.
Right. Or at least quite different.
Better or as good or sort of different in an interesting kind of way. And yeah, like choosing Cuphead is just so hard. I mean, I'm not even sure how like that should sound. Like if someone gave me that aesthetic to do as a video game, that would take me months to probably land on the right spot for that. And and the point, same with Inside and Limbo. You're just comparing it to the original game. So I guess if you do a replacement, don't choose a game that's known for its audio, because you're probably just going to disappoint people. Yeah. I guess would be my, in fact, it would be better to do a thing where you chose a game that you felt had bad audio or the audio kind of let it down, and you're like, I could do this better, and then go ahead and do it better, even if it's just like a mock-up. That's probably like a, because then people's expectations, you can do it before and after and sell yourself kind of more effectively like that.
Or something.
With Cuphead, it's almost like there's it's like a dichotomy of what's going on there, because if you think about those animations from the early part of last century, the Fleischer brothers, that kind of stuff, the sound was terrible, right? Like it was absolutely like people like yelling into microphones, and but it was really cool all at the same time. So if this had that sort of just super fucked up, like distorted, messed up sound on it, I would have been super impressed and then gone like, well, wait a minute, but you know what I mean? Like, what a weird choice. It would have been a cool design choice and it would have caught my interest. But, then it's like, maybe if they followed up with something super hi-fi in the second part.
Right. Just to show that diversity. I totally agree with Emily. Like, I'm not sure what I would do if I got this on my desk one day. It would be maybe something with the old school kind of palette, but like just synced like super tight, and everything that's like fully covered to kind of make it as interactive as possible, to kind of make it a bit more hi-fi in its presentation, but maybe like kind of lo-fi in its palette. I mean, it's really hard to choose. So in terms of
because the graphics and the visuals there are such a throwback to that old animation style, but in a way it's way better than the old animation style. Like this is like a huge evolution. So you kind of expect the sound to do the same thing. It would be a nod to those anyway.
So
now I'm designing the sound.
I know. Can we do that game?
Yeah, I kind of want to do that now. That's cool.
Yeah, word. Thanks for these follows, by the way. I can't really acknowledge all of them, but Prognosticator and Hafid and NVK Sound, all these folks, thanks for your follows. Let's take a step back here and talk about this criteria for a second. So in terms of presentation, let's take a step back from the sound of it entirely and just look at kind of how it's presented. So first off, I had concerns even upon its submission, not even starting the stream today, but weeks ago when we got this thing, and the fact that it wasn't a website and that I had to search for the guy's name even. Just being piearesquared, I think it's maybe a bit bold from my perspective to apply with an alias and not with your actual name to a company. Mind you, I'm not sure what kind of company Mohammed's looking to apply to. If it's to a indie studio or something, it's not uncommon to say, oh, I'm working with like Dose 1, for example, and we know it's Adam Drucker, but we can say Dose 1 because it's already established. I feel like maybe you need to kind of earn that to like use an alias only, but I don't know. But in terms of cards and such, we have Game Audio Reel by piearesquared. I mean, I would say it wouldn't hurt to have things like a website at all, but if you have a website, to put that website on this front card, to put your contact info on this front card as well. And then as far as titles, Mike's opinion on redesigns aside, yes, it does say sound redesign, and it says by Studio MDHR, so the credits are there despite the fact you didn't do it yourself. That's good, just as a courtesy. And voiceover, Atmos, sound design, SFX, music. Yeah, okay, sure. I mean, it feels like kind of a few redundant words in there, but okay. And then in terms of the next piece, we've got...
Although, wait, hold on.
Okay, sure.
Atmos, like what? Like in a 2D video of a 2D scroller, what
Yes.
does Atmos even mean? Like,
Right.
what does that mean?
I mean, I kind of would group Atmos and voiceover and SFX like under sound design. Like if you say sound,
Oh, atmosphere.
yeah, so that, not like Dolby, yeah.
That's like a VCR on the brain. I was like, Atmos, like what, you're gonna spin
Yeah,
it
you're-
around the room.
You're
Like,
just
yeah,
right in
sorry.
there, man. Yeah, it's all around you.
Being a dumbass, so.
Yeah, so in terms of also I know that I think I saw Matt mention the titles aren't great in terms of what's being told, but also it's just a general kind of rule of thumb is probably worth having these things up at all times. Like don't fade the titles out so that it's always clear what it is, because you can't be sure kind of where people's attention are from moment to moment, or attention is from moment to moment, and kind of let them read it when they want to read it. So the next clip though, we've got Limbo sound redesign again, Atmos, soundscapes, Foley, SFX, AV Sync, like it's kind of saying the same thing over and over again. So if it's a sound redesign, like I get it, that's all I need to know. And if I hear music and such, then cool. However, if you did do something like download the Wise project file and do some implementation yourself, which is a thing you can do with Limbo, then I'd want to know that. And in fact, that's a better choice than doing this kind of linear design. For what Mike was saying, he's like, it's an interactive media, so it's not as powerful. There's maybe worth in doing things like a trailer, maybe, Mike? Would you say that?
Yeah, and again, this is sort of really Valve specific.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some companies that are looking to hire like just straight sound creators. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
people who
yeah.
just make sound assets and hand them over the fence. But at Valve, we kind of do all of our own work, and so really. Even if this were just a super hot shit sizzle reel, I'd be like, yeah, I need to know that somebody can come in and basically complete a game on their own, both doing good sound and doing implementation before it's even really much of a consideration. So it is a very Valve-specific mentality that I have about that.
Right.
But, it's games. Like, do you love games? Do you love interaction? Do you love plugging your stuff into it? Like, why is it so easy these days to just go get a demo session, like you said, and plug stuff in?
Yeah, Matt's saying there that a linear cut at Limbo now that the Fmod project it's Wise, but now that the Wise project is available, it's is it Fmod? That was Wise. I'm pretty sure it's Wise. Is available. It's really dead in the water being linear. I totally agree. Like if you're redesigning like Trine 2 or something, there's no Fmod, and that is Fmod. There's no Fmod project available for that one. So I mean, why would you do anything but that kind of thing? But yeah, I mean, interactive is definitely going to put you ahead of everyone else doing redesigns. I think that's the biggest thing, is that with this distinction note as our fourth point, it's really hard to stand out if you only do linear media. It's not going to show your aptitude for kind of game sensibilities and such. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, and that said, okay, so just to back off it a little bit, like watching it, it was pretty clear pretty quickly that it was partially a study for Mohammed, right? And that's fine. Like, I think doing a linear replacement is a great way to study. And I noticed, in Limbo, he's got some halfway decent filters on some of the sounds, like the tire coming off of the thing, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's a couple sounds in there. It's like, oh, you kind of learn something from replacing sounds to Limbo, which I totally respect, and that's a great process to go through. And I can kind of, by looking at it, gauge his sensibility and where his skill sets are and where he should probably go from here. But it's not something that makes me want to hire him at Valve. Maybe an indie studio or somebody who just needs somebody to make some sounds.
Right, sure. And actually, there you go. Here's a past guest host, Robbie Elias in the chat, DVS3131. Who's a sound designer at 343. He's saying it's not fun to have to teach people Wwise on the job. And I'm sure, hiring a junior position, you'll probably have to teach a bit, but having to teach from scratch is not very attractive when you have options of candidates who already know something, right? All right,
yeah,
so in terms of lol hi, says Robbie. Hey, Robbie. Right, so let's carry on to material selection. We kind of talked about this a bit already in terms of the nature of being sound redesigns, but it's only 2 things, and it's a minute each. And I was, in terms of holding attention, it definitely did not hold mine, and I would have been skipping after probably 10 seconds. So I was at GDC at the Game Audio Boot Camp years ago, and I think it was Scott Gershon, I think it was, who said something I'll never forget. And he said, it's really important when applying to a job, you need to make me want to hear more in 10 seconds. And this did not hold my attention for over 10 seconds. So it's a problem. And in terms of even this intro, we've got silence for a few seconds. And in terms of a sound reel, I feel like it's like a kind of prime moment to be, hey, here's something cool to listen to. I'm a sound designer, right? So yeah, 2 clips only, this much time is a bit questionable. How do you guys feel about things like game jam pieces?
Like what do you mean game jam pieces?
So in terms of, let's say they did a game at like Global Game Jam, or if they went to a local game, like for example in Vancouver we have the full indie game jam every year, and it's some 100 people in a room making games for a weekend. So showing that
and someone submitted that for a demo?
Yeah, in some cases they'll have a demo reel with maybe 5-6 things in it over a course of a minute, and maybe like the 3rd thing is a game jam thing they worked on.
Oh hell yeah! That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah. So there you go. Even in that case too, it's even like even if it doesn't sound amazing, if it's like passable, then I think it's still more positive than something like this, where it's a sound redesign, because it shows you care. Like we can teach you how to get better at Wwise, but I can't teach you to give a shit, right? And being at a game jam is kind of a very clear indication that your passion is real. You're doing this of your own volition. And then also it includes things like, well, it's interactive and you're putting sounds into the game. So having a bit more of a, Mike mentioned it seems like a study in this case. I think showing some more things that aren't just you in a room by yourself, or perhaps even this is a school project, I have no idea, right? Just showing a bit more of indication that you're digging in and you want to learn would help a lot.
Yeah, and that you love the process, you know what I mean? Like, we get plenty of applications from people who are really skilled and have a like I said, a sizzle reel or whatever. And unless we can see that somebody has been through the process of shipping a game or understands the process of, Perforce and all the different elements that come into actually creating a game. And Game Jam's a perfect example of something we love to see, because it means that not only have they gone through that process, but they've gone through it in a really high pressure, kind of high speed fashion. Mm-hmm. And, and so you have to understand all those things. And it doesn't matter how good your sounds are. It's if you show up and can't check something in, we're going to have, a problem.
Of course.
So.
And there's also heaps of free and free, if not really cheap, Unity projects that are just like whole projects where you can just actually do the real sound swap inside the engine and learn so much about that. And I think, and when you just the act of doing that, it just exposes the real art of game audio. That's kind of where it really, really is. It's not really in the individual sound assets, even though that's important, but, it's the way those assets are played back in the engine and how they're integrated. That's where I believe, at least, like the true art and the true magic, it all kind of comes to life in there. And yeah, Unity has a bunch of projects that you can actually just download for free that come with all their temporary sounds, and you can just do basic sound swaps into that and even improve onto it and learn how to write some little scripts and that kind of thing. If demo reels come across Mike or my desk, I mean, we would just love to see that. And the other thing that's cool too, that we don't really see as much, but I think personally it would be really cool, is if you're just starting out and you don't really have the experience of like a AAA sound designer and you do the integration, I think it's okay at that point, even in your reel, it's okay to like highlight things that you thought could have been better or that you just don't know how to solve yet. If you're a student, I think that's actually shows like a critical evaluation of your own work, and that you're not basically saying to me, I know how to do everything and this is perfect.
Right.
If you're going for like entry-level jobs or first-time jobs, or you're kind of like looking for feedback and you're applying to some of the big studios, that could be helpful. I mean, I certainly would definitely respect that if a reel came across my desk and someone had to go at integration, and for whatever reason they hadn't applied like volume variation onto footsteps because they just didn't know that was a thing, and they're just like, I don't really like how the footsteps sound, but I recorded them myself and this is how they came out. I think that's an interesting analysis of people's own work, and that's certainly something we look for at Valve.
That's really interesting.
In candidates. So yeah.
I would think people might be tentative to do something like that, or hesitant to do something like that, as it might show kind of like, hey, here's something that's not good. It might be a little bit scary to put yourself out like that.
It's more about like analyzing your own. I mean, even I would happily do that for any of the games that I've worked on, and just because essentially that's what we do in interviews here. When we get people into interviews, we ask them to like talk about the things that they thought went really well, on previous projects they've worked on. We also get them to talk about things that they wish had gone better, from a creative standpoint, and how well someone can articulate, their own sort of criticism, I guess, or how well they can abstract their own process. It means a lot to us. It's definitely something we look for. So
right.
Yeah, we really hire the person, and the work is just like, the work has to be there. That's kind of it's like, if the work's not there, then there's really nothing to start with. But if the work's there, then really what we're trying to figure out is what's this person's process? Can they think about it? Can they discuss it? Can they design? Because it's sound designer, it's not sound maker, right? And can they be self-critical, right? Especially in sound, being able to criticize your own work is so incredibly important.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I saw Matt comment in the chat too that in terms of hiring and hiring people that show a very clear passion for games and game sound, like that magic you're talking about, Emily. We went to Mohammed's Twitter feed here, and it seems like a lot of Twitter and also SoundCloud, Matt said, we've got a lot of music things, apparently. I haven't looked myself yet, but a lot of music things and not a whole lot of indication of a love for game sound. And I think he even may have mentioned on Twitter in his submission, he's like looking to kind of get into game sound more. So this is maybe the first step in that transition, kind of doing things like redesigns and exploring that as a medium. So I think showing. So yeah, it even says here, aspiring game audio sound designer. There you go. So that's kind of these are very, very early steps. So good on you, Mohammed. I hope you stick with it. So in terms of content quality, I think we could probably talk about the sound itself for a second. Do you have any immediate thoughts, Mike?
The first thing I noticed was the pew 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 at the beginning.
Yeah, sure.
And I really listened for variation, and man, I don't know, my ears might be old, but I didn't hear any variation there. And that's kind of a game audio 101. But unless the idea was to make a really specific kind of repetitive statement, which I almost, for a second there at the beginning, I was like, ooh, maybe that's, it's a design choice. And then I realized like, no, wait, that's not, that's not actually what's happening here. And so that stuff was kind of lost on me, and also the design choice. That first one, Cuphead's just hard. Like we already kind of talked about it.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, we're not sound makers, we're sound designers, right? So those choices are such a big deal. But, on the positive, I thought there were some sounds that actually did fit Limbo a little bit in the second half. And I even going up those ladders, there was sort of a little musical, like, doop, 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 doop thing to it. Although those were a little flat. But that's sort of, I guess, my initial takeaway.
Okay. Yeah, I have some all caps passion in the chat right now I want to address. So he says, get rid of, this is Matt by the Matt Martinson at Clay saying, get rid of aspiring in that Twitter bio. If you're doing it, you're doing it. Just believe in yourself. Okay, sure. Okay. That's a fair point. Probably we got Tree Castle and Robbie as well saying yes, absolutely truth. It's probably worth saying that the whole fake it till you make it thing might be. You don't need to be. You can fake it till you make it, and also still call out where you have room to improve, like Emil was saying. It's not like they're mutually exclusive. So
every young artist that comes to me and who is like basically asking how do I get a job in the industry, I always tell them like just go do it. Yeah. I go find some friends who want to make a game and make the game. Like, boy, there's no better way to know how a game is made than to do it, and even if it doesn't, you overreach and it doesn't come out that great, you learn a lot more than just kind of chipping away at the edges and hoping somebody gives you a break,
Right. I guess I'll call it one thing here, Mohammed. So in terms of, and I don't even know if you're in the chat watching right now, but I'll address you like you're watching the VOD at least. There's a few things I heard here and there, and again, Cuphead is brutal hard, and in terms of space and stuff, it's hard. So I won't even talk about that. But in terms of Limbo, we have a pretty clear sense of space in this game. Like left to right, we have a very good idea of the space we're in and what that should probably sound like. And so in terms of selling the world you're in here, there's this one kerplunk of the tire, I think it is. Let's hear this. Yeah, here it is. So that it sounded a bit like perhaps you recorded that yourself and it was in a bathtub in a bathroom. That's what it sounds like, at least. So in terms of this space, I don't really feel like I heard the splash come from there, like from there in the scene. It feels a bit more like it was kind of all around me. So suddenly the sense of space that's being sold everywhere else in the clip, it feels like a completely different space. It feels like that tire kerplunked in a completely different environment. So it's pretty important to keep space in mind, because the moment something doesn't feel like it belongs in a space, it'll pull the player like right out of it, and that's what happened here with me. So
I kind of felt the same about the spider leg sound too. It was like almost, but there was something where I could hear where it was recorded, and I just went, ooh, God, not quite.
Yeah, so there's a bit of panning going on too. It's nice, but it seems like everything could be more intentional.
Yeah. But then again, like I just watched that little rock that rolls off the thing and the tire that's super filtered. Like, I kind of like that, I mean, it's only those, but I thought that was a cool choice.
Yeah, it definitely isn't like everything is wrong. And the Limbo clip is definitely stronger than the Cuphead one, but of course that's for like a variety of reasons, and it's just they're both brutal hard to redesign. But I would like to hear more of, well, interactive and perhaps different kinds of games as well, because these are like totally like ends of the spectrum style sound design. So I think having something a bit more to show you can like land in a conventional place and then kind of expand from there is maybe worthwhile as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you guys think about the droney music in the background? Like, I definitely had you know.
Yeah, well, here's something I'd like to ask you in general is for reels, we generally recommend that if you have a music reel, like have it be music only. Just pull that magnifying glass out and just say, "Here's my music." And if it's sound design, have it only sound design too. So if it's because it feels like what often happens is if it's music and sound in a sound effects reel, for example, it's really hard to tell if the music's being used as a crutch or not. So
Yeah.
in terms of this, I'd be curious what you think about that. Like, do you want to hear everything at once, or do you want to hear things kind of separated?
Well, it's funny. It really depends, right? Because we're sort of the inheritors of the Kelly Bailey world, and he just did such an incredible job with music and sound design that all kind of came together and made a whole. And so, if that's what you're doing, like if that, it's kind of picking it's like, are you going to make a long reel or a short reel? If it's super interesting, make it longer. If your sound design and your music really works together and it's really like a whole that you created and it's a piece of art, then show it that way. But if you're really just showing the music and the sound design is in the way or whatever, then
yeah. The integration demos, I think are like the place where, for me, it all kind of comes together. It's okay to have music at the same time as sound effects because that's a part of it. Like, how are you controlling the mix? Like, there's just a lot of problems you have to solve, obviously on the integration side. They're not like isolated things. But if it's just a straight reel, I personally like having them separate. Like, here's my sound effects reel, here's my Foley reel, here's my music reel, and then even a separate integration reel of just here's some audio capture from integration work I did on XYZ.
Right.
Yeah, that's that way. It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear what you're evaluating at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so we've been kind of working on. So by we, I mean Power Up Audio. Power Up Audio has been just chipping away at this kind of sizzle reel style thing for a while. But the thing is, we're really busy, so we don't really need the reel, thankfully, because we've gotten to a point in our careers and as a company that, for the most part, we're getting this word-of-mouth references, and we're getting like the same kind of developers come back to us to work with us again. So we don't need to hustle as hard as we did in years 1 and 2. But our sizzle reel is really more of like a credits list than it is a piece to kind of use to adjudicate our ability to do our job. So we're like, hey, here's like Darkest Dungeon, here's Towerfall, here's Necrodancer, pretty cool, right? Okay, see ya. And that's kind of that's the gist. So it's serving a very specific purpose in that case. And I think if the role of this reel is for adjudication, if the purpose for it is adjudication, then I think Emily's super on point, saying that separation is super valuable. So, okay, so I guess we can talk about distinction. I feel I'll say right away, I don't think Mohammed's quite standing out in a crowd yet. How do you feel, Emily?
Yeah, so for me it was like pretty obvious that he was an aspiring, quote unquote, aspiring
right.
sound designer from like the very first 5 seconds of his reel. So at that point, my whole frame of mind kind of changes. Like, he's definitely too junior for a job at Valve, but from that point on, I'm just kind of, in my mind, I'm like trying to suit him up in my mind towards like indie gigs, or like, would he be how's he going to build his career? Basically, I'm planning his career path in my mind as I watch the rest of the reel. But for me, just kind of going back to the stylistic thing, for the Cuphead, it really struck me immediately that was like to use it sounded like completely synthetic musical sound effects for the whole entire palette. And that was unique, so it immediately kind of stood out to me, but it was immediately like, in my mind at least, it was the wrong choice.
Yeah.
Or it seemed like it was, okay, let me rephrase that. It wasn't the wrong choice, but it seemed like that was the limit of his language as a sound designer, was just to use those tones. And so that's the point at which I was like, okay, it's definitely unique. It stands out, but I couldn't really use this because it's just so the aesthetic that he's chosen is just so narrow
Right. Yeah.
And it's not really, it just doesn't really reflect of what's going on the screen. But having said that, I thought there was some tasteful things in there, like that laser sound that everyone was kind of noticing straight away. As repetitive as that laser sound was, it actually didn't annoy me. It's a pretty nice little repetitive sound, and that's super hard.
It is hard, yeah.
So I think he's got good taste. You know, we have a similar problem in Dota. You know, we just have like that whacking sword sound just play relentlessly, and that's a really hard thing to do. Same with like footsteps in Counter-Strike, like in games you just have. So when I see little things like that, or like a highly repetitive sound that actually doesn't sound too bad, like that stuff actually stands out to me as a positive. But just in general, I think my primary thing, the point at which I noped out of this demo reel, was the aesthetic was like the really limited synthy aesthetic that went with Cuphead. I was just immediately just like, nah.
And you know, I kept meaning to mention that I think it's really important to realize this opening shot is like a boss fight, you know, and this music is if I close my eyes, it does not feel like a boss fight at all. I mean, maybe it's a Cuphead thing, and to be fair, I can't think of what Cuphead sounds like in terms of boss fight music right now. But just coming in blind, it feels a bit bold. Bast50, what's up, man? Thanks for that follow. Good to see you. All right. Anyways, and Mike.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what hit me immediately. Was just like the sounds didn't really match up with the energy that was going on the screen, and that's kind of our primary job. By hook or by crook, we have to like match that mood.
Sure. Okay.
And so yeah.
And Mike,
I had the same thing. In fact, I was immediately like, well, wait, what is the right sound? And I was all of a sudden not even listening, because I was trying to think of like, what would be really cool right here? And then I was like, oh yeah, you know, that sort of swing era jazz is probably what was, I didn't play Cuphead, but I thought it looked like an amazing game. I'm guessing it's, you know, like something Peter McConnell would kill at, you know what I mean? And that choice to put the like almost Nintendo era sound design against it, I did the same thing Emily was saying. Like I kind of went, wait, is this a cool thing? But then the boss monster does the with the kind of distorted microphone, which made me think then of the old recording style, you know, that's super distorted. And I was like, oh, well, that would be awesome if this whole thing was done in that style, but kind of upgraded for modern technology.
Right.
And the second that I'm really all of a sudden going through all the, like I'm doing the job, I'm like, okay, so, you know, but in the same way that Emily said, like I noped out, but then I started going, okay, this is probably somebody who's relatively junior. Like, is there something I can tell them that might help them or give them an idea of what to work on or how to, you know what I mean? Like, that's usually pretty quickly where I go to with this stuff. Yeah. You know, if I have the time and don't just move on. You know?
Yeah, that's it's funny because when I first watched it, the big roar, like you were saying, the kind of distorted thing. In any other piece, you'd be like, "This is distorting horribly. Fix that." but in this, it's kind of like, well, okay. it's kind of.
Yeah, well, actually, I was like, the whole game should sound like that.
Yeah,
like
totally.
that should be the cornerstone of the whole thing. The whole thing should sound all screwed up and poorly, you know.
Yeah, recorded with like limited access to tools and such. Yeah.
I think I saw somebody like post earlier something about the wire recordings that they were doing way back then. You know, that sort of wax or wire or whatever that super distorted.
Just like etch the sound directly onto the physical media.
Yeah, exactly.
Robbie, you're just following us now, man. You were a guest host like 4 weeks ago. Okay, so let's move on then from piearesquared. I'll give him one last round of applause. Thank you very much, Muhammad Ashraf. And I'll close these windows off. Thanks, pal. All right, on to Matas. And you have the sites there, right? His site? Okay, so we've got... okay, so with this one, we'll go through the site a bit more. There was no site last time, so we'll go through the site a bit here. So right away... right away we have logo4.png pops up. That's... maybe worth dealing with, stuff like that. I'm curious, so Emily and Mike, if you're looking at sites, do you see the kind of the rough edges like that? Like if you hover over real, we see real copy.png. Does that bother you? Because it bothers me.
No, it doesn't bother me so much.
All right, and Mike?
It really depends. It kind of just depends on the level of the person I'm looking at, because, if we were to hire that person at Valve, we don't have management. The truth is you can't just go do whatever you want at Valve, but there is a lot of leeway to do various things, and you might find yourself actually posting, well, not you might, you're almost guaranteed to be posting something that, millions of people will consume, and you may, odds are pretty good you're the one pushing the button. And if you haven't done diligence, man, Reddit will come back at you so fast and let you know how you screwed up.
Yeah.
And so crossing your T's and dotting your I's or whatever is a pretty big thing for us. That said, a sound person who's making a website, it's pretty good effort to begin with. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, the nitpicky things don't really matter to me. Like, the misnamed hyperlinks or whatever, they don't really bother me. But the general aesthetic does. Like, that definitely influences me. Yeah, I think that says a lot about if you're a creative person applying for a creative job, and then you're just Comic Sansing all over your own website, then I question your judgment.
Yeah, sure. And we have had a few of those actually, so I'm glad it didn't happen this time around. Matas' site is on the surface, looks not bad. Right away we have latest work right up front. And I think one thing that comes up time and time again on Real Talk is it's really important to make it painfully obvious what you want people to spend their time on your site. If you have something like 9 videos on that front page and there's a sum total of 25 minutes, what do you look at? I mean, if your best thing is the 8th thing in minute 2, well, how do I know that, right? So it's pretty important to have that up front. And this is pretty up front, so good stuff.
The second I brought it up, it had the little cubes with the swords, fighting in that top, the bar across the top. And I immediately clicked on it. I want to play that game, whatever that is,
Yeah, it's the animated thing at the top is something we've never seen on Real Talk, and it's a bit interesting because you're not. Maybe it's kind of portfolio piece-ish kind of thing. Here's what some things I've worked on look like, but it's a sound site, so I'm not sure if it's really that beneficial. It is visually engaging. That's nice, but I don't know. Anyway, so let's go ahead and just glance through the site real quick here. So we've got, front page. We have a quick about. So my name is Matas, and Yasu is my alias. I am a sound designer focusing on audio design and implementation using Unity and Unreal game engines. Occasionally I do some music production as well. If you would like to get in touch, please feel free to use a contact form or just hit me up on social network. Okay, to see my previous work, please visit the real page. Okay, and I feel like a lot of that stuff is just kind of goes without saying. If I want to contact you, I will use the contact page, don't worry. And if I want to see your work, I will go to the page where your work lies. And I'm generally a fan of trimming fat in that respect. Having 2 lines, here's me, and have a good time is maybe worthwhile. That's my opinion, at least. I don't know. And then over on the About page is probably more of that stuff. So skills and proficiencies, we got Unity, Unreal, Wise, Ableton, Logic, SoundForge, field recording, post-production. Here's a question. This is a very polarizing issue, it seems, among guest hosts. Do you care about lists of software?
Not really, no.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so it's usually that's the case. There's a few that are it's good to know, but usually it's I don't care how you get the job done as long as it sounds good.
As long as you're certified in Pro Tools.
Yeah, so I'm curious if that's how true is that? If someone's amazing in Reaper, is that a no-go for you?
I just could care less, really. No.
All right. So we got the CV here. There you go. Contact form again. It's right there, man. We'll get in touch. Don't worry. Yeah, okay. So we'll go to music here really quick, or credits first. Actually, credits. We've got Trace VR. Okay, cool. ISO Dash and Desert Fire. I would love to be able to click on these and see some more information about them, apart from just some text. I assume they're the things we're seeing in this video, but no dice. And then in the music, we've got Okay, here's isodash and some stuff. And colonize, which is not in the credits page. Okay. And then retrocore also, which is also not in the credits page. So right away, I'm kind of asking questions a bit, Matas, as far as what these things are. Yeah, all right. Well, we'll look at the reel and see if it clears things up a bit. So I'll go to the reel and... here's another question. How do you feel about dating demo reels?
Ooh, I clearly from the first one, that I don't read shit, right? So, I immediately went on the first page and watched the reel, right? That's right up there on the front, which is Game Audio Reel 2017.
Sure.
But then, really, I realized there's all this other stuff, and so, what I really want is just to see the thing. I want the one thing that's more or less, and then if I dig, I can find extra, right?
Yeah, I mean, so this is kind of a very good example of why I don't like dating things, is we've got at the very top Game Audio Reel 2017. At the bottom, we have Game Audio Reel 2016. Like, at this point, this video should for sure be redundant, right? Like, if you're showing your hottest stuff in that top reel, then why would you ever want to show things that are not as hot as now, It's just
well, you could date. I think it's cool to date the project, but you don't have to date your reel, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, yeah, certainly. I mean, saying, hey, here's something from like last month. It just shows you're active and you're not, and you're out there, going hard. So with this, there has been the argument in the past that it's something like you might compare the past reel to your current reel and say, oh, well, they've really improved. But I don't see that being a reality very often. So, anyways.
Yeah, usually you can see that in the projects. Like if someone's worked on a project from 2012 and then you see the project they worked on in 2013 and 2014, like, you'll see an evolution there most of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like if for some reason Emily had a web page, which I don't see any reason that she ever would, but like it'd just be like, oh, cool, here I'm going to go look at this work from 10 years ago, and it'd be just as amazing as her work from today. So that from a retrospective standpoint or a way to review, but then again, we're talking about somebody with a decade plus of experience. So
Emily,
luckily I don't have a website.
No.
Are you sure? I'm on it right now.
Oh God.
It's awesome. It's really good. Welcome to Emily Industries. I specialize in making games sound like they do in your dreams. Holy, what a strong site, instantly. All right, well, yeah, and this is like, here's me, see ya. And the thing is, I'll show my site, to be fair here. I have Power Up Audio, I have, like, that's it. So here's my amazing site with, like, 2 links on it and a pixel picture, and that's it. So, yeah, similarly, it's like we don't really need sites kind of where we're at right now. I'm not looking to get hired. I don't think you are either, Emily. So, yeah, it's just sort of, yeah. Anyways, so let's go over to Matas, and here's the last name. I'm not even going to try. I can't do it. Everyone can see it. Just read it to yourself and try your best. Here we go. Press play in, let me make sure my audio's up, actually. I don't think it is. Mixer. Make sure Chrome is cranked. It was not. There we go. So I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1, and go. All right, and applause. Thanks, Matas. Okay. Well, it was short. It was half the length. Almost exactly. So I see, again, opinions in the chat. They're coming up. So this has, Emily, what you're looking for, has some implementation.
Yeah.
Hopefully hit some of those buttons for you. In terms of first impressions, presentation, how do you feel?
Yeah, it's good. So I think the FPS demo was really strong. You know, it was really tasteful. The guns sounded great. Footsteps sounded good. I mean, footsteps are. I mean, I'm working on Counter-Strike at the moment, so it's like everyone's footsteps sound too quiet to me. But you know, it's really. I thought that was just really tasteful, and it's considering it was like implemented, and I'm assuming that I'm just watching, you know, gameplay capture there. Yeah, I thought that was really solid.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really have any feedback on that. I just would be like, okay, let's see what else we got from that point, because there was nothing for me to really, you know, I was like, if you can do good weapon sounds and you can do good footstep sounds, that's good. What's next?
Mm-hmm.
So there were no fails there at all for me. I mean, it could be, you could argue that you know, if you're going to do an FPS reel, that you would also want to see some ambience in there, some different weapon sounds, maybe some monster sounds. Like there's a whole world you could convey, but just with the weapon sounds and the reverb treatment and the footsteps, you know, for what was being shown, I thought it was good.
Mm-hmm. And it's probably worth mentioning as well that this demo is one we've seen probably 8 times or so on Real Talk. It's becoming more common, and it's kind of like how we were saying that Limbo being designed linear when the project file is out there. A linear design is kind of dead in the water. This is becoming kind of more common to see. So now it's like encountering the problem of now you're up against everyone else doing this also. And in terms of filling out the environment, we're getting a lot of people calling out ambience in the chat, and that's a very common lacking thing in any reel. And people are like, ooh, silent cars in the reel, in the chat. Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of focus on kind of what's right in front of you, and the same goes for designing things like trailers and linear content. Good design often focuses on like what's right in the middle of the screen, what you can see, and great design tends to kind of bring the world to life in things you can't necessarily see in front of the camera. And this one has basically no ambience. And I've heard this demo, like this implemented Unreal demo, with great ambience. So it's immediately not as good. But in terms of what's there, yeah, sure, cool.
The familiarity is actually kind of nice almost. You know, this is, speaking of Atmos earlier, this is the demo that the Atmos guys used, you know, before they had Overwatch or whatever for Dolby. And, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, I know this space. And so then you can immediately listen and, you know, you kind of know what it is you're looking at. And so then you can just listen, you know what I mean? And then know sort of what the circumstances are. But I kind of come at it like Emily, like I immediately was just listening really to the gun sounds, both the near and the distant ones, and they sounded like I couldn't find any huge fault in them. And so then my mind immediately went to the footsteps, just like Emily, and the reverbs and the sort of the implementation, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I see there's another video right below it, right? And so I was, you know, like my next step would be to go watch that video and see what they have to say about implementation. And admittedly, I think you're right about ambience, and overall, the fact that, you know, the whole thing isn't covered probably means, you know, from a Valve standpoint that you know, it's you know, there's not really much forward, you know, it's kind of done. But I'd be curious, right, just to see if there's something really impressive in the implementation side, how he was achieving those things that I noticed. You know?
Yeah, Metrozol in the chat's calling out the fact that the second half of the FPS bit is mostly silent. It's sort of Foley, and that's it. So why not fill out that soundscape? And Broken Tangent in the chat is saying, from a sound design side, is ambience pretty involved in the creation process? And I think coming back to what Emily said earlier in the stream, I don't know if you were here for that one, Tangent. I saw you come in. Also, welcome. What's up, man? Broken Tangent is an animator, I believe. And in terms of sound design, I mean, the whole kind of job of plugging in sounds and bringing things to life, that really is what we're doing. We're bringing things to life with sound design. And when you have all the things in the scene, well, that includes, like the things bringing to life, includes ambience. So things around you. I can call back to, I think it was Damien Shepard, where he did this demo really well, and he would walk past one of these kind of Unreal signs, and you hear it humming, you hear the humming go past you, and that's like, well, this is a world, and this thing's making sound, of course, why not? And I recall that right now, you know? That was weeks ago.
Yeah, it's like if you think about real life, and you feel immersed in real life, obviously, hopefully, unless you think it's all a simulation. That's a different problem. But
different problem.
You don't, like, as a player, as a person in real life, or a player, as a person in real life, you don't really make any sounds. Like, you barely make footstep sounds. You can't really hear your own clothes sounds most of the time. Like, the only thing you have is ambience. Like, you have the sound of a distant air conditioner, people talking down the corridor, cars going past outside. Like, that's kind of all you have, and creates a tremendous amount of sound, like opening a car door and driving away. But that's like that's like a 1% of our day is actually probably making sound ourselves as a quote unquote player in real life.
Right.
So if you want to immerse people and have them really believe they're there, then that's like, from my perspective, it's all about the atmosphere. That's like the number one thing.
Rad.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at BioShock or Half-Life or Portal, all of those games, we're telling so much story with the background music. Sorry, the sound design.
The water in BioShock. Oh my, the water is insane in BioShock. Just all the different kinds of water, different magnitudes of leaks and such. It's different depths of water in like walking through shallow water, right? It's so much going on in that game. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and even though my initial take was to go, oh, okay, the weapon sounds are fine, footstep sounds, oh, there's some decent ambience in terms of reverbs and whatnot. Like, that's totally where my mind went, which is probably a pretty good thing, I'd say. In terms of the way this is put together.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, like, games are never finished, right? Like, there's so much detail to be addressed that really it's just like you just don't have any more time.
Yep.
And VR is going to be even more so that way, where it's just like there's just infinite amount of things that you should be putting sound on and can be. And so I think there is a certain amount of like I don't want to say laziness there, but it's like but that would be a big question. Like, is this finished? Like, do you how do you see this, or what was the point? Maybe the point was just to accomplish good weapons and implementation.
Here's a consideration that Matt and I bring up a lot on Real Talk, and that's that and these two reels actually didn't feature any shipped content, which is kind of rare for us actually. But in terms of shipped games, we tend to be more lenient with what they sound like because A, someone approved this, and B, you shipped a game, and shipping games is hard. So when you have a redesign like this, linear even more so, you are making every choice. So when there's a choice not made, or there's an absence of sound where we think there should probably have been some sound, then that's all on you. Like, there's nobody else who can kind of take the blame for that, whether it's budget or timeline or whatever, right? So it's a bit we hold it under a larger magnifying glass in this kind of case.
Yeah. And I think the reason we're kind of hammering on the atmosphere a little bit is because in both of these demo reels we've just seen, we've only seen two different styles represented. Mm-hmm. And granted, these are reels from people looking to get more experience, but for a job at Valve, and I think Mike would agree with me on this, we're looking for gun sounds, footstep sounds, ambient demos, like in a range of different styles. Like, kind of the more diverse you are in your own in the context that you've worked in, and also the styles you can achieve as a sound designer. Like at Valve, that's kind of the bar for us. So even though this first half of this demo is really good, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. That would kind of be my main critique at this point, is that I just haven't. There's just not enough there for us to really proceed with at this point in time. But if you're an indie developer looking for probably a talented sound designer to work with, someone that can make good sounds and you don't have to worry about it, then I would recommend this person for that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And
although, hold on, the second half though, that kind of threw me a little bit. Like, I would have cut the video just with the FPS part and left out the Unreal match.
Right. So
component.
I was gonna ask about this. One thing this is getting into. Well, let me just blast through. We have about 15 minutes left here, so I'll blast through presentation. Matas, your front splash is good. It's like 2 seconds long. It's cool. Has some sound. Nice work. Has the website. Cool. In terms of the opening shot, we've got some titles. The titles aren't like super attractive. They're also kind of low in the frame. They're getting into the kind of the limits of what's safe. So things like the progress bar might overlap text in, like this shot, for example. It's a bit of a problem. So maybe just move your lower thirds up a bit, just a small detail. And the font is like, it's Arial, whatever. It's kind of just it's very, very low effort, and it comes across like that for me. In terms of leaving titles up, it might be worth saying this is Unreal demo, implementation redesign or something like that, for people who might not know what they're looking at. It might be worthwhile to say what it is in a little more detail than shooter game. The second clip, basically same notes, just have it like the Match 3 game. Is this like a demo that is downloadable? It probably is. I actually haven't seen this one, but I assume it is based on how you're presenting these two things side by each. And the end is same thing, cool, good job, good end. So, into material selection. So we've got these two things, and that's all we have. And mind you, there are more things in this site, and I'm curious why they aren't in this reel, because they look pretty cool. Like that kind of square sword thing you brought up there, Mike. But back to the reel itself, the one reason we bring up material selection is that I think material selection and what you choose to put in your reel speaks a lot to what you want to be working on. And when you have these two things back to back, I have no idea what you want to be working on, because Match 3 is a very different beast than a first-person shooter. They have huge challenges, both of them, but they're like, it's a Venn diagram where it's like a very small overlap, So I'm just not sure. So Emily was saying that having two things showing diversity in ability is very useful, but having only these two things, I think, leaves me personally asking more questions than are answered.
Yeah, I always think of it as like, if you have two things that are different from each other, it's weird. But if you have a third thing that's different from those two, it's all okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
There's a weird kind of symmetry that's needed sometimes with this sort of thing. And that second bit it's acceptable.
Yeah.
But not, And so in concert with the first one, I start to go like, oh, okay, well, this person can probably deliver acceptable, like Emily said, like if you were an indie developer and you needed just kind of meat and potatoes sound design like that, this might, because it is all acceptable. But when you're looking at a game like that, I think of PopCap, right?
It's pretty Peggle, yeah.
Which is pretty topical at the moment, but
Yep.
they just kill it with that kind of thing, right? So again, this, you look at it and go like, okay, so there's nothing new, no big new choice or design risk kind of going on here, or anything that shows me that this person's gonna make something exciting, But at the same time, that also means that they're probably gonna make solid conservative choices that will be acceptable, right? So it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, certainly it's not like Valve. We would, we're looking for people who are going to make choices that are even meta, way back.
Sure,
okay, I'm making a reel, and this is, what I've got, and every single choice that goes into the presentation of this thing is up for consideration. But I think it's worth reading. I mean, I think that the artist should take the time and think of how someone like me is going to read it, right? Like that these say that this person makes conservative choices, but delivers apparently on those choices. When you think, Emily?
Yes, I agree with everything you're saying, Mike.
Short and sweet. Yeah, in terms of the music and sound design, we've been focused on sound design so far. So the front page being Game Audio Demo Reel, Game Audio Reel 2017, this would speak to me as saying, I am focused in sound design, but I can do music sometimes also, which is what he says on this front page. Occasionally I do some music production as well. So, I mean, that's kind of similar to myself. Like, actually, everyone at Power Up, myself and Joey and Cole and Jeff, we all have backgrounds in music, and we can design sound from a musically informed perspective, but I wouldn't want to be composing music for a game because there's people that can do it faster and do it better. So, it's, I'm curious if you kind of want to sell yourself, Matas. I don't think you're here right now, unfortunately, but I'm curious if you want to sell yourself as music and sound equally, then it might be worth kind of showing them equally. Like front page, have music here, sound here, side by each. And if someone wants both, they can watch both. If they want to see music only, they can watch that one only, right? I think just some focus there might be worthwhile. Because so far, I have not watched any of your music stuff because it seems like it's kind of like an afterthought almost. There is a page for it, mind you, but being your front page kind of tells me like this is the important thing to watch. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. At Valve, we find that really, I mean, making that super clear. I mean, it's something. If you don't make it super clear, we're going to ask about it anyway because you can kind of do quote unquote anything you want. You know, we're all for sound designers who have musical skill because most of our sound designers do, and it kind of comes into play there. But if you're going to want to step up and be like, I want to do the music for this game, then you better have a pretty good self-identified idea of how good you are at it, and right, and you have to get the buy-in from everybody who's kind of working on it, and so it's you know, if you don't say it, we're going to ask it anyway, right? Where your interests lie.
Right. Okay, so yeah, on the on the topic of, let's see here, we have about 5 minutes left. In terms of content quality, we've kind of touched on that here and there already, so I don't want to go into that too much. But we've got this this casual game thing as a secondary. One thing Matt called out in the chat is that no VO is better than bad VO. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, okay. So and the thing is, when it's good VO, we're like, damn, it's really good actually, like killer. Actually, my own personal, my gang demo derby submission, the first year I was at GDC, I had some voice in there for some stuff for my game Phonopath, and I hired like Gavin Hammond out of like the Bay Area and like David Godfrey out of North Van and stuff. Like these are guys who are in like The Walking Dead and stuff. Like they're good actors, so it was good. But yeah, we hear stuff on Real Talk where it's like it's pretty brutal. And the thing is, it was good VO in the demo derby. And they got called out. It was like, that's like really good voice, good job. So it's like a very, very risky thing, because if it's bad, it like pulls everything down, and if it's good, it pulls everything up. So it's a very, I would ask or encourage anyone considering voice in their reel to consider it carefully, and if this is really something that's going to be beneficial to your reel or not. So, anyways, awesome. Like it's fine. It's not great. And sounds like, again, like it's in a different space. And all the sound is, as Mike and Emily have put very well, it's all kind of passable. It's just okay. So
yeah, I would definitely say Matas should, keep going, and hopefully he's getting gigs, and you know what I mean, and building future 2018 reels.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
I don't.
Yeah, this is definitely a good example of a reel I want to see more from in the future. If it came back, I would recall this and say, oh yeah, it's Matas, sure. Where's he at now, kind of thing.
And I totally appreciate that there's an implementation demo reel. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We didn't watch it, but I do appreciate that that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, so I guess the last thing here, back to our criteria, we went through a presentation, material selection, some content quality stuff, and in terms of a distinction, yeah, so I mean, like Mike's saying, we see this, we're like, we hope you keep going, and we hope you're getting gigs, I don't know so like Emily said, this is perhaps not actionable from Valve's perspective. I know if you applied to Power Up, this is very similar. It's not quite at a hireable state, but if you came back later, like 6 months, and said, "Hey, here's my new stuff. It's Matas again," I would for sure have a look. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a better reel than my first. That's a better sound designer than I was when I first started in the games industry, for sure.
Yeah, I can say the same for myself, actually. My reel was like a CDRW I dropped off of the draw step, and it was like, I had some like bad music I wrote and stuff. It was awful. But anyways.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we're just about wrapped up here. So I want to give one more round of applause for Matas. Thank you so much, pal. And again, one more round of applause for freaking Emily Ridgway and Mike Morasky from Valve for joining us and taking 90 minutes out of their very busy schedules, I'm sure. Super appreciate it. So some claps in the chat for them too. Beauty.
Yeah, thanks very much.
All right. I guess I'll let you get back to work then. And yeah, thanks once more. It means a whole lot to come on board our humble stream and get back to the industry a bit. So cheers.
Cool. Thank you.
Right on.
We'll see you around.
Thanks.
All right, cheers. And I'm going to turn on some freaking Portal tunes again. Heck yeah. And sidechain back on. I no longer run the risk of being rude to my Skype compatriots. All right, and thank you everyone for hanging out again this week. Next week we have, let me double check and make sure I'm not getting this wrong. I'm pretty sure I know, but let me just triple check. Heckin' yes, says Zoe. What's up, Zoe? All right, by the month, my calendar says, yes, next week is in fact Camden Stoddard of Double Fine. So I'm looking forward to that one too. And actually, I think Emily was once working with Camden on some things at Double Fine. So there you go. So back to back, and then later in the month, of course, we have Jerry Blungeri of Take Two and Jeff Van Dyke, who is freelancing but worked on a whole lot of stuff you would know, including Alien Isolation and Total War and Assault Android Cactus. The list goes on. He is a decorated composer and designer for sure. One of the few guys that can do it both and get them done exceptionally well. I'm looking forward to that one big time. All right, so I'm going to sign off right there. I'm going to go ahead and host someone, I think. Who the heck is streaming? And yeah, again, I'm not sure if Matas and Mohammed were in the chat. They may have just been watching without an account, which happens occasionally. But if so, thank you for being here and watching, yo. I hope you got something out of it. And Matt, feel free to drop your mentoring. Oh, there it's already there. Audiomentoring.com. Perfect. Sign the freak up. Sign it up. And as well, Matas and Mohammed, if you watch this VOD, feel free to, of course, follow up and ask any questions if you have any clarifications you want addressed and such, you know? All right, let me see what we have here. Let me see who we have. I was considering doing some dev stuff on stream, but I think I can just go faster if I'm not streaming. Time is an issue right now. We have like a week and a bit until Starcrawlers releases, so we're going hard. Let me see here. Following. Let me see this. We got freaking. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna host my good friend, Excessive Profanity. This guy's so good, man. What a champ. What an absolute champ. He's playing some Warhammer 40k right now. It's going good. Okay, that does it. Thanks a ton. We'll see you next week.
Than ever.
Shoof with the follow. What's up, Shoof? Okay, see ya.